And finally, we get to our build tab. So once we've set up everything the way that we like and we want to share it with our world, this is how we publish our data. So here we're seeing a setup for our configurator being built out to WebGL. This is the exact build that was created that is running on the website. So if we went down here and we set our different options, we could press build, and this would publish our data. And this is the exact output that we would hand over to be embedded onto our website. We can set our type of build. And one of the other types of builds that we could create, as opposed to just the standard WebGL configurator, is also something called a former render build. Which brings us to former render. Former render is another output of the format editor that allows you to create a standalone application that can use generate high resolution materials easily. It allows you to create images and videos manually or automatically and export all your materials in different ways. Some examples include 360-degree outputs, splitting layers for external composition, turntable renders, and as mentioned, all of these materials can be created with batch rendering, which allows you to generate materials of all the combinations of variants through product, any camera angle, and all the views automatically. This is how we created all the different materials we see on the TIMI example site. And as seen in the high definition configurator, former render is also capable of running headless on a server where it's able to respond to on-demand requests. So let's jump over and take a look at former render. So this is what the render build looks like. Now it'll look fairly familiar, but this isn't running in the Unity editor. This is a standalone build. This application can be shared or given to a designer or a marketing person to allow them to create any type of marketing materials they want. So we can see we have our standard setup. We can move around. We can have our options set up on the left-hand side with our product tab, and we can select them and see them being applied in real time and change them. And we can also move freely throughout the scene. And then when we're ready and we say, well, we want to take a shot like from here, we like the way that this looks, all we have to do is press this button right here, and it'll generate a high definition render of what we have in the scene. And that shows up in our gallery tab right here. And here's the image that we just captured. Now we also have multiple other cameras that we can store throughout the scene. So for example, if we like a specific location or setup, we can click this and we can see it set up here. It has its own appearance settings. So again, we can set up post-processing, exposure, depth of field, bloom, whatever type of elements that would enhance your visuals. We can set those up for each camera. And if we like this shot, we can just take another picture here and we can see it show up in our gallery right away. So it makes for an extremely efficient creation of different videos and images in a high definition format from any angle that you like. But if you really wanted to capture these with all these different options, as simple as this is, it would take an extremely long time to go through and manually generate all these images. So that's where the batch processing feature comes in. And all we need to do is open up a new batch rendering panel, and we can create a new batch rendering job. And we can go in here, and the batch rendering job first looks for a base shot. So this base shot is what it needs to define the product and environment, camera position, and all the camera settings that it needs to take images from a specific setup. Now, instead of having to go through and write code or go through a bunch of menus to set up all the things, we already have that data captured in the images that we made in our gallery. So we can actually drag and drop the image directly into our base shot. And by adding this, the batch job now knows the position, camera settings, and all of the other objects that it needs for the product and the environment set up to take images from those locations with those settings. Then we want to go and set up our variants. So here we can go back to our product tab, and now we can actually just drag and drop different variants right into our variants tab. So we can say we want different wheel tracks, we want front tools, different cabin colors, and so on. And we can drag these into here. And now when we expand these out, as opposed to having a single option for each selection, we can select as many as we want. We can select, we want to have all the front tools except for the brush cutter. We want to have cabin colors, all except for red, and body color, and so on. And we can select all the different options that we want to capture. And now this is telling the batch render job, we want to, for every one of these cameras, show all of these different options. And if we go down to the profile, we can see that it's done a quick calculation and said, with those two cameras and all the options selected, this is actually going to generate 240 images. We can then go down and there's also a template option where we can actually set up how we want it to name it. We can give it logic to say how we want to name these objects as they come out based on all the variants and setups in it. So like front tool color yellow, cabin color brown, and so forth. This will take those variant names, those variables, and generate all these objects in an organizable format. And that schema allows you to not only be organized, but also facilitates other automation like the web integration. And all we need to do now is press render, and it would go through and generate all those combinations from any type of camera setups that you had fed into it and with all the variants that you had done. And this is how we generated all the imagery and assets that we saw on the website.